You're listening to ayahuascapodcast.com.
Again, we know from DMT, it's released when we are born, it's released when we are passing, it's released in the mother and the baby when the baby is born, around the hours of 2 to 4 a.m. in the morning. There's an increase of that, especially when we're in like deep states of REM. And so, they call it the God particle. There's a reason why there's so many plants that have it. And yeah, it's an incredible opportunity to allow your ego and your body to think that it's dying and to go into that, transition point where, again, the Egyptians and the Buddhists, especially in the Tibetan Book of the Dead, that's what they were training for, to stay very calm and present and in the space of non-duality as they were going through that. But here we have a chance to die before we even die. And then we receive the gift that people receive at the end of life when they think that everything is okay and they're just received in this incredible bliss and love.
In
this episode of Ayahuasca Podcast, I talk to Salimeh Tabrizi. We talk about non-duality, ayahuasca. We talk about Zoroastrianism and psychedelic history of religions. We talk about awakening and how many people are now called to a different lifestyle. We talk about the change that is happening to Earth and much more. I am sure you will enjoy this episode. This episode is sponsored by La Huayra Ayahuasca Retreat. At La Huayra, we combine affordability, accessibility, and authenticity. La Huayra, connect, heal, grow. Guys, I'm looking forward to hosting you. Hi, guys, and welcome to Ayahuasca Podcast. As always, with you, the host, Sam Believ. Today, I'm interviewing Salimeh Tabrizi. Salimeh is a clinical counselor. She's a plant medicine facilitator, a founding member of Canadian Psychedelic Association, and she used to organize Cannabis Hemp Conference and Expo in the past. Salimeh, welcome to the Ayahuasca Podcast.
Thank you, Sam. Great to be on here and meet you.
Salimeh, talk to us a little bit about your background, the short story of your life, and how your life brought you to work with plant medicines.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm originally Iranian. I was born in Tehran and my family moved to Canada when I was 9. And, I definitely, as an Iranian, we have these strong roots. And deep roots in plant medicine, which I realized a lot more as I was going through my journey with ayahuasca. And so I started my career in, conventional therapy. And soon enough, I realized that talk therapy and, just engaging with people on the trauma level, without the energetic understanding I was hitting walls and my clients were hitting walls. And so when I was working with individuals in my internship as a therapist in training, I, had to deal with a lot of individuals with anxiety and depression and sexual trauma, as well as bereavement, addictions, the whole gamut. And I was realizing that when I was working with them, I was starting to get autoimmune issues. And autoimmune issues now I know is like self-resistance, self-doubt, self-hatred, So a lot of my pieces were coming out as I was picking up other people's energies. So that kind of started me on my own awakening journey where I, grabbed onto whatever I could get my hands on, whether it was acupuncture, Reiki, different kinds of energy work. And then I came across an article on ayahuasca. And met with the author, who is a dear friend and colleague of mine. And I asked him, I was like, how do I do this? Where do I go? And this was over 10 years ago now. So it wasn't as common, but he connected me with a wonderful group in Yalapa, Mexico. And I went down there around 3 months after by myself and sat with a Peruvian shaman. And my first experience with ayahuasca were through the Shipibo lineage.
Great story. I have so many questions. Can you tell us about what is this Iranian plant medicine? I've never heard about it.
Yeah, great question. So in Iran, we actually, on a daily basis, we use um, the seeds of Syrian root, which in Farsi is called espand. And espand is actually a cousin of ayahuasca. You can actually derive DMT from it. And so it's so interesting to me because growing up, we use espand as similar to sage. So you burn the seeds and in a kind of metal container, you carry it around the house. And it's not only to ward off negative energy, but it's also just like sage is, it cleanses spaces of microbials and fungus and things like that. And so when I went back to Iran, because we usually go back, my mom goes back every year, I go back every 2 years or so. And when I went back to Iran after having my experiences with ayahuasca, I started seeing the fractals and the flower patterns in the Persian carpets, in the mosques, in the calligraphy, Iran is such a mystical country. And so I started just seeing the DMT patterns everywhere. And I thought, wow, it's so interesting to me, again, how humans have been activated through DMT, through plant use, and the achievements in art and history and poetry that they have had access to because of, I think because of the connection to the DMT plants, the DMT derived from plants.
Yeah, you hear about the other DMT containing plants, and but generally in ayahuasca you have the vine, which is the MAOI inhibitor, and then you have the chacruna or chagro, that is a DMT plant. So if you were to eat that Syrian root, you wouldn't feel much, but if you burn the smoke and then you inhale it, you should be able to feel something. So I'm just wondering if people, when they use the salmerio and the incense and burn the smoke, if they maybe felt something. Reminds me of that story of a burning acacia bush in the Bible, right? There was also apparently DMT containing. So yeah, I think I'm beginning to believe that all religions and all spiritual practices have their roots in some form of a psychedelic experience, whether exogenous or endogenous. So I don't know if you have any opinion on that, but maybe talk to us about in Iran. They used to have a different religion, right? It was called Zoroastrianism. Have you ever studied it, or maybe noticed any patterns between your newly discovered psychedelic work?
Yeah, great question. So, with Syrian root, with Espan, I don't know if people are. I don't believe that you can have a psychoactive experience, but it's definitely something. It's still, we're still imbibing it, and so I believe that again, just like the chemistry of the plants, I believe you have to maybe cook it and add. I was reading around some of the recipes, like how to make espand psychoactive. And so there is a brew process for it. And yes, as Zoroastrian is the first monotheistic religion that's been documented. And so when we think about where, the different kinds of religions come from, Iran, Iraq, that area, like between the Tigris and the Euphrates, it was the cradle of civilization. And it's really fascinating to me what rituals and what concoctions, what elixirs they were drinking in Zoroastrian religion. And Zoroastrian religion is also, it's committed to the light. And so the fire element is really powerful in that religion. And of course, now we know through the different kinds of maybe our own experiences or the study of physics and, modern understanding of this simulation or what we're even experiencing here, is that it's all light. and it's a vibration of that light. And so, yeah, it's really interesting. I'm still learning more, and to come kind of full circle, I started really reading about the lineages and what initiations different cultures were going through. And this past eclipse, not the past eclipse, but the eclipse before in October, I actually went to Egypt for the first time. And I also went to Greece. I went to Athens, and I went to Eleusis. And in the Immortality Key, the incredible author of that book writes about the initiations in those cultures. And Egypt, it's its own thing. It's the access codes and all the downloads that individuals get walking through those temples is one thing. But in ancient Greek culture, they would actually have a pilgrimage from the Parthenon in Athens all the way to Eleusis. And in Eleusis, the large temple that was dedicated to Demetra was a place where they would be drinking some sort of concoction. They don't necessarily know if it was soma or if it was, whether it was mushrooms or it was cannabis or another mix. But it was, the mystery schools, everything was hidden. It was not spoken about. And the individuals would walk and go through, these kinds of, and it was only accessed by people that were training to be priests and priestesses. So, and here we are in this incredible time in our lives where we have access to the medicines to be able to connect with God ultimately in the deepest ways.
Yeah, I read a book about it. I think it's called Road to Eleusis, and I believe the drink was called Kikyon. And it's incredible to kind of understand that people who created Western culture as we know it, Homers of the world, they were drinking a psychedelic brew, and there's also reasons to believe that it later on went on to become what we know now as Christianity, and like early Christianity might have been a psychedelic cult. We don't really know the answers, but it's pretty easy for me to believe that they might have used help from plant medicines to get all this information to then later on put it in the book or books. So talking about religion, I know you're a big fan of the topic of non-duality. As a complete newbie in this topic myself, please talk to us a little bit about that and what is the connection there between plant medicines and non-dualistic states?
Yeah, I'm definitely a newbie and a student on this path as well. So, we're all learning together. And my just my experience, very limited experience with the Vedic texts and Buddhist traditions of non-attachment, full acceptance, and really ultimately what I received in my first experience of 5-MeO-DMT, which it was even beyond love, that experience of complete expansion into what felt like, in lack of other words, the majesty of the divine, or what we could what our limited mind can understand as God. And in that space, there was no good or bad, or, even up or down, or self or other. It just was. And I think, a lot of the questions that the Eastern sages continuously ask is, who am I? And to continue to come back to that space of the essence of our beingness. And so that's, as far as I've gotten, and I continue to remember that moment when I went into the complete dissolution of self. And a lot of people say it's love, but it was, for me, it was there was not even the essence of love, because then the duality of love is fear or hate. It was beyond all of that.
And how did you achieve that state?
It was through a 5-MeO DMT experience.
Talk to us a little bit about that. 5-MeO is Bufo, right?
Yes, yeah, it was the synthetic version, but yes.
And how a lot of people ask us, when they come to Lawira, do we offer 5-MeO DMT? We obviously don't, but because there is a word DMT in it, there is a lot of misconceptions that it might be something very similar or same, but in reality, even if you rewrite the psilocybin formula, you can also call it some kind of DMT. So as somebody very experienced with ayahuasca, and you tried 5-MeO DMT, what similarities or differences have you noticed, and what is your belief system regarding the tradition of it or lack thereof? How did it feel?
Yeah. So of course the Bufo experience is different. The secretion from the toads from Sonoran desert, again, it's just wild. This this toad species in the desert has one of the strongest psychedelic secretions that we know of. And so my experience was with the synthetic, because personally I'm even with Campbell, I'm very, very sensitive on how the medicine is received from the animal, and what kind of state they're going through as far as shock or so I went with the synthetic, and it's, as a lot of people have mentioned, it's a rocket ship into that space of a complete unity or oneness or the majesty of what this experience as a human is about. So of course I can't really put any words to it, but if someone has experienced it, they can kind of understand. And it's not that everyone always goes to that extent of complete unity with God, or the hand of God on their back, or feeling that essence. If there's, as if there are blocks or other things that need to be released, then those things will be released as well. But yeah, again, we know from DMT, it's released when we are born, it's released when we are passing, it's released in the mother and the baby when the baby is born, around the hours of 2 to 4 a.m. in the morning. There's an increase of that, especially when we're in like deep states of REM. And so they call it the God particle. There's a reason why there's so many plants that have it. And it's an incredible opportunity to allow your ego and your body to think that it's dying, and to go into that transition point where, again, the Egyptians and the Buddhists, especially in the Tibetan Book of the Dead, that's what they were training for, to stay very calm and present and in the space of non-duality as they were going through that. But here we have a chance to die before we even die, and then we receive the gift that people receive at the end of life when they think that everything is okay and they're just received in this incredible bliss and love. And we have the chance to feel that now and while we're living. So how does that impact us as we're going through our life and stressors come up? I always think it doesn't matter.
If you die before you die, you don't die when you die. I think in this illusion mysteries, that this was the motto of their I don't know, what is it, religion or a sect or organization. Since we're talking about plant medicines, or should we call them animal medicines or natural psychedelics, obviously you work a lot with ayahuasca, and Can you talk to us how an ayahuasca experience resulted in you starting this big cannabis conference, and why was it about cannabis?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Before we jumped on the call, we spoke a little bit about guidance and being open to the messages, as many of us are, that come through the plant medicine experience. And I would love to hear a little bit more of like how your inception story opened up with ayahuasca and why you are now, the steward and the guardian of the largest retreat space in Colombia. And so for me, it was the same. It was, it wasn't like I consciously went for it, where I was like, oh, I think I need to do a cannabis conference this year. It was not like that at all. I was already working in the ayahuasca ceremonial spaces for 2 years in Vancouver. And during that time, similar to what you were experiencing, the medicine was telling me in the ceremony space, sit with this person, work with them in this kind of way. I'll show you how energy moves from the sacral to the third eye. Let me show you how the Kundalini moves through people and, support them in opening up their chest and their heart chakra. These kinds of things were happening in the ceremonial space. And then it was just through a meditation without any medicine that I had the spirit of cannabis come in. And as I've shared this on different podcasts, the spirit of medicine, the spirit of cannabis, which I referred to as Santa Maria, which is from the kind of the Daime traditions. It came through as a feminine entity and said that she was really abused and feeling misunderstood, and even to the point of being prostituted. And so from that point on, I started just engaging with different cannabis researchers and advocates and activists in the Vancouver community, and started just asking them. I would tell them the story, and then I would ask them, would you like to come and speak at this conference? And so the first year was very small, 200 people. It was at Simon Fraser University with 3 panels. And then the next year, it really grew to around 30 speakers, 2-day conference, as well as an expo. And this was before, cannabis was legalized in Canada, but it had a very strong influence and culture. And the third year, we moved to University of British Columbia, and then the fourth year, it became the largest plant medicine conference in Canada. And so the spirit of, I always say, similar to maybe you too, is that it wasn't like Salimeh was doing things. It was one of my favorite video games when I was growing up was Zelda on Nintendo. And it just literally, similar to what you were saying before, it's like I was being controlled, or like things, I was just the head and the mouth and the hands of the medicines talking. And it was intense. It was like 17-hour days. It's something that I look back on and I think, wow, how was I so possessed to be able to channel that energy? But it was incredible. And a lot of amazing people came together to make it happen.
Thank you for sharing. And as you asked me that question, 17-hour days and the video game analogy, that sounds very familiar to me. Because I think in the first days of Lawara, it was maybe even more than 17. It would be like, I'm kind of sleeping, but kind of working. And when right now our team is 23 people, but in the past it would be just me, my wife, and the Taita. So I would be at night facilitating in the ceremony, then trying to sleep a little bit, waking up in the morning. My wife would cook the breakfast. I would serve it. I would wash the buckets, and then I would start the sauna for people, an ice bath. So there was not much sleep involved, but a lot of passion, that's for sure. So talking about my story, as I told it to you before we started recording, But that's a side of me a lot of people don't know about. I don't generally talk about it a lot because I'm afraid to scare some people away because I kind of think that medicine is for everyone, but a lot of people get scared by too much spiritual talk or too much woo-woo things, as you can refer to them. But what I realized that when I first came to work with the medicine, I looked at it as a here's this plant medicine and you take it and changes something in your brain and it heals you and you're good to go. That's about it. And everything else is just noise. To then changing to, okay, there's some spiritual aspects to it. To now, I would say it's probably equally so, if not even more spiritual process than just a chemical process. But what started my journey as a somebody who organized an ayahuasca retreat, synchronistically so, was one specific experience where I went and I was drinking ayahuasca in the jungle, and I had an extremely deep experience where few things happened. Number one, medicine gave me my Icaros, meaning that I was chanting this indigenous chants that I never heard before, and never did before. I didn't even, it was almost as if I was just listening to myself making those noises, but it was clearly chanting. Then it showed me this vision of how the universe works. It was as if I lifted the bonnet on the car and I was looking at the engine, but it was this, but with like this reality, and there were some moving sides to it, which kind of remind me of those, this things with many eyes, like angels, cherubims, whatever it is. And there were entities there, and they told me, feel free to look around, but we're busy, can't really engage with you, but here's how it is. Then I started seeing many visions of me healing people with my hands, and there were like very specific instructions. One of them was that I'm supposed to drink ayahuasca and I'm supposed to give ayahuasca to the person, and then one-on-one. And I clearly saw that my legs were, I have to have bare feet, and I have to stand on the grass, and I have to touch the person and move the energies. And it was all very bizarre to me because I'm an engineer by trade. I come from one of the least religious countries in the world, and I can admit that I used to be zero spiritual. So for me, it was very hard to accept. But the same night, there was a person in our group that had a headache, and he was walking from hammock to hammock asking for if somebody had pills for a headache. And he asked me, and I said no. He came back to his hammock, and medicine guided me, as you're saying in this video game analogy. I just felt myself drawn to come next to his hammock. I then told him, I know this is weird, but I'm getting instructed to help you with your headache. Is that okay with you? And he said yes. I could see in his head, I could see like a orange triangle that to me represented the pain. Then the medicine told me to put my hands on his head, one hand on his head and the other hand on the ground, because in the jungle, Moluccas have earth floors. And then I was doing this spiritual effort through which I was removing his pain, passing it through my body and putting it in the ground. And as I was doing so, it was this weird spiritual effort, and I could see like jagged patterns. That's what I recall so far. Surprisingly so, his headache went away, which was surprising for me because I still doubt some of those things. But then he was not really connecting to the medicine. He would drink, but he would be complaining that, he's not seeing much visions. He stood up, and as he was walking to the bathroom, he literally fell on the floor and got like so connected he couldn't walk anymore. And I think that was might have had something to do with the process that we did with him. Since then, I started, after this experience, which was extremely powerful and profound for me, I started asking all the taitas what is it? What do I do with it? And all they told me, drink more medicine and it will teach you. So I started drinking more medicine. That led me into starting drinking medicine from home. That led me into starting an ayahuasca retreat. And many synchronicities later, we ended up with the current version of Loira. But I'm probably missing some parts of it. But since then, I've been drinking medicine. I drink at least once a month, and maybe 2 or 3 times a year, I get those instructions once again, where medicine tells me, go help that person. Normally, I go sit next to them, hold their hand, and it starts showing me things in their body, like as weird as like I could be like flying around their body, killing parasites or removing something and putting it somewhere, or taking something from somewhere else. I can't explain it because there's no words for it, and it's something that I rarely talk about, but it obviously is a core part of Loira, and I'm still heading towards that direction where maybe I can learn enough to be able to do it on demand, or be like, yeah, here, let me help you. But right now I'm just waiting for instructions. So this is, I think, one of the reasons I don't mention it too much. I wouldn't want to be in position when somebody very sick comes to me and says like, help me. And I'm like, well, I don't really know how to necessarily. So I feel like I'm on your podcast now, and not the other way around. I don't generally spend so much time talking. So let's go back to you. From the work that you're doing, stuff that I'm mentioning, does it sound familiar? Have you heard anything about that before? And how your personal guidance looked like, maybe specific experience where it came to you?
And thank you so much for sharing. And I appreciate you, because you have been really committed and devoted to this path, and having 3 different retreats come in every month where you're holding, again, so much energy for individuals with all their, anxieties and beliefs and traumas and ways of suffering to come through. And, I have so much respect for retreat spaces who are really doing it from the heart. And because I always say too, like on this path, we really get paid through love. It's not like this is, a weight. The medicine definitely has kept me in check. Like, this is not about financial gain. Like this absolutely is about service. And yet we are so held and so taken care of through that service. So it's a beautiful trust and synchronicity that happens, and so much learning. So I agree that we kind of come from, me and you, like you're Eastern European, Latvian, I'm Iranian. So we have a little bit different roots. But the levels of healing and like herbs has been a part of my DNA in this lifetime. So I wasn't as closed off to it as you can, and which is so interesting for you, right? Because you can speak to a different kind of population who is going through a similar awakening as you did. And I think it's so important that different people share their experiences, because you're going to touch different populations. But for me, I was psychically attuned and quite intuitive prior, but all of those pieces kind of came online a lot more when I was going through the work with medicine. And that's where I support my clients now too. Like, we all as humans are multidimensional beings. We have access to all of these clairvoyant, clairsentient, attunements. That's what we are. We're tuning in always to our environment, to each other, to ourselves, and hopefully more and more to our earth, so we can start to live differently and feel differently. So for me, it was definitely, there wasn't even a place that I couldn't trust. Like in those early ceremonies when the medicine said I have to go and sit with somebody and put my hand on their chest or on their womb because there was like a miscarriage energy that was being released. Like, this has been in the indigenous lineages for, centuries. So we're just tapping into it now. And I feel that my trust has increased. However, even before every ceremony where I'm sitting with somebody one-on-one, or I'm working with a couple, or I'm in a bigger group, I still have that like deep prayer of medicine. Please allow me to be the best conduit of this energy. And so sometimes I'll still sit there in meditation. I'm like, is it going to happen? Will it happen this time? Just like it's happened every time. So I love that it's not a button that we can turn on. No, it's really through humility and through strength. And like, I have to be at a really good energetic level to be able to serve. And I don't take that work lightly. And I also think it's interesting because not a lot of people are working with ayahuasca in the way that I feel that I've been called to do, which is being attuned to what they're going through and speaking to them. It's like psychotherapy with ayahuasca. Whereas with MDMA and psilocybin, that has come online where individuals are, being asked questions, or with LSD. But with ayahuasca, it was like that for me from the beginning. So when my clients come, they're not just left on their mat, which is beautiful as well. I think when individuals go into a group setting and the iqars are being sung, or the vocal bowls or the songs, and they're getting transmissions and they're being worked on. But I remember when I was in groups, I felt that people were going through certain things and they weren't being supported. And they were just kind of like in the struggle. And the ceremony was lasting, 10, 12 hours. And I remember like being like, just going over to them and telling somebody, hey, you got to breathe right now. Like, take a breath, circulate your energy. This is about your mom. Or like, this is a piece around your dad. Or this is the trauma that you had when you were 6. When I could actually like engage with them in that moment, they felt like there was a relief that happened, that wow, somebody within this deep, deep space of healing is feeling me and seeing me, and they're with me, and we are relational individuals. And I think the time of like people doing things on their own or being alone is maybe there's a transition. So, but bless, like, again, I feel that there is so much transmission of Aya in so many different ways, from the UDB to the Santo Daime to the Barikinia churches to, what we see in the Shipiqua tradition when it's dark and they're like, you're just left alone. And then the facilitators just step out. Or what's happening beautifully with the Tatas in Colombia, and the Ecuadorian traditions. And so for me, it's all so beautiful, and there are different paths to the ocean and rivers to the ocean. But, with my work, again, I go very deep with one person. We kind of clean up the whole house, internal house. And so usually each cup is a chapter. So, I'll just share with you my client that's coming in next week. She fainted. She had a concussion in 2015. Where her life got turned upside down. It was the start of her awakening experience, but she was never the same. And so it's really like slowed down her processing, but also has opened up her gifts. So I have a sense that next week when she does come here, it's going to be similar to what you said, a lot of work in the brain, and then opening up her meridian chakras and meridians and chakras in her hands, because I have a feeling that she'll be working with people on one-on-one like that as well, and also like sexual clearings and healing, so that she can draw from her root up into the crown. So it's just fascinating working with people in that way. And then the medicine said that it doesn't want to be wasted, because a lot of people will keep drinking and keep going back into that ceremony. And for me, I don't feel that unless, you're like really, really on the path, like someone like you who is working with people and to be able to like have your maintenance. But otherwise, I feel like 1 or 2 or 3 ceremonies, when done really deeply, that's all that people need. But that's just my sense. I always tell people, don't believe anything I say. It's just my subjective experience.
Yeah, there's many different ways to skin the cat, many different methods. I think ayahuasca is self-regulating when it comes to drinking too much or too little, because if you drink too much, it will just tell you, why are you back so soon? And what about that homework I gave you? And they give you a terrible trip so you don't come back for a while. Speaking about the awakening, your story, I never called mine the awakening, but it's definitely the beginning of it, because I don't feel like I have awakened completely. This whole imposter syndrome, as we talked about, is not an easy thing to deal with. But uh, what about it? Like, I know you like talking about the this change that's happening in the world now. What is happening? Why are so many people being put on that path and being yanked out of their normal life as an engineer or as a lawyer or as a storekeeper, and end up finding themselves in the jungle or in the mountain? What is going on with the world?
Yeah. Um, yeah. And I would love to hear your perspective because we're working with so many people coming and receiving that support too. And then currently, one of my other populations that I work very deeply with is the this individuals from the U.S. military vets who have gone through multiple deployments and were in the special operations units of the military. So this is like the top 2% of the military, and they are actually going through my dear friend's clinic, Ambio in Tijuana, and it's through an amazing organization called Vet Solutions, that's putting these special operation vets through an ibogaine journey plus a 5-MeO journey within 4 days of a retreat. And so me and my 9 colleagues who are coaches, we see them 2 sessions before and 3 sessions after. 5 of these wonderful individuals and their partners came down in May for an ayahuasca retreat. To just give you to answer your question of what's happening and why do I feel that someone who has been deeply in the military complex is now completely aligned to the plant medicine path. And so you can imagine, what they have gone through from TBIs, right? Rage and anger towards their family because of the head injuries, because of the trauma that they've experienced, multiple deployments in war zone countries, as well as, addictions to pharmaceuticals, and, full on alcohol dependency. So they come in with a massive gamut of things that they're dealing with. And they're also really highly trained to repress and to just get through. That's the whole training, right? Keep it together, compartmentalize, don't talk about it, suffer in silence. And these are epic men, incredibly strong, incredibly bright. So, I feel like Aya is activating wisely who she's bringing in and who's being called to the medicine. And obviously there's been a complete misbalance of the masculine and feminine in our world. And so when these individuals came down and they, as couples also, came down and sat in ayahuasca ceremony and, received more and more healing. Why do I feel that's happening? Is because each one of those individuals is going to go back to their own community and be a conduit of light and be a ripple of change. That's, as too, with all the people that, you've held space for and what they do in their world afterwards. Right now, me living in Costa Rica, and it's been, 3 beautiful years, even for me, I knew that I was not regulated. I'm still working on being regulated, being nervous and having my nervous system be regulated. And I feel like from the Western cultures, we are in some ways addicted to anxiety. That's what my ibogaine journey was all about. He's like, I am still like this in a lot of ways in my life. So when a trigger happens, my rational mind is like, whoa, be independent, be strong, push through it, work hard, all of those stories of survival. But in actuality, I realized that that's not survival. That's only going to get me to a place of burnout. So extreme highs, extreme lows, extreme highs, extreme lows. And being in Costa Rica and really like being so held by the nature here, and also learning from the Costa Ricans who've grown up here, they see life with equanimity. I don't see them going up and down through their days. If anything, our nervous system, like the expats and the travelers coming here, were like, excuse me, where's the coffee place? And I need to get this done right now. And my car is not working. And they're just like, whew, pura vida. Like, it's all okay. It's all happening. And they just have a essence of beingness that, is really, I don't know, it's teaching me a lot just to say that. And I feel that what's happening in the Western culture is just a lot of people they can't even live in that vibration anymore. So yeah, they come here, they drink, they come to you, they drink, they go into the Amazon, they drink. They're doing all kinds of medicine work in the States and in Canada, and they're anchoring a new vibration in. And they're saying, no, I'm not going to run around like a chicken, I'm sorry, with its head cut off anymore. I'm going to pay attention to my meditation. I'm going to take time with my partner. I'm going to go and rest in the afternoon. So I feel that that's the only way we might be able to make it through this time of crisis on our planet. If we're not grounded, I don't feel like what's it all for then, if we can't even be peaceful? And that's where I think the new alternative might come from. It's not going to come from anxiety. It's going to have to come from relaxation.
Yeah, it's somewhat similar here in Colombia. There's not as much stress, I guess, as in the Western world, but everything is mañana, so you can always, as I like to joke, don't postpone to tomorrow what you can do the day after tomorrow. But where do you think it's leading us? People getting awakened and then awakening more people, because obviously some people know my dream is to wake up in a world where yesterday everyone had ayahuasca, because I believe it would be pretty hard for people to be anxious or angry or aggressive after that. But I hear some people talking about like an ascension or a different dimension, different vibration. And I must admit, I know nothing about it. I still somewhat, I guess, not criticize it, but I'm not ready to accept it. But maybe you can change my mind. What is happening? What is going to happen to the planet? I don't know if you believe in that person.
Yeah, and again, I would love to hear your feelings around it. Individuals who come and drink, then what are they feeling? What do you feel that this whole journey, playground, like school is about?
Well, what I'm gathering now from people having their processes and coming back and then telling us what they saw is that there's an overwhelming pattern that this life and this existence is a like a training place where the souls go to learn something, to graduate, or go to the next level, which is a good belief system personally for me, because it's better. I'd rather believe that we're a soul and we're gonna go somewhere else than that we're just sack of meat that dies and rots and nothing else happens. So that's what I'm gathering so far. But regarding like planet, and I've heard it being mentioned 5D. Generally, we really focus on the healing side of it. So people come and they heal, and everyone comes in. But there's always 2-3 people in the group that talk about this other side of things, which is like something to do with aliens, or maybe it has to do with like a very, very deep spiritual, but like new age spirituality, which I just don't understand it yet. I don't know much about it. So I don't know, the things you mentioned sort of sound this way. Maybe you can explain to me what is going on. Maybe I can finally piece it together.
Yeah, and I think we're on the journey together. I would love, to one day have the absolute truth, but I feel like that really only happens when we do transition. And one of my friends, this is kind of dark humor, but one of my friends once said, this is probably like some alien show, like it's a really bad reality show that aliens are watching, and they're like, let's see if these humans make it. And I don't know. And, I oftentimes will talk about my one really potent experience in Spain. It was during the World Ayahuasca Conference, which, my dear friends from ICEERS put on. And this was in Spain in 2019. And different lineages would have different ceremonies every night. And so during the days, we would go, and just like the cannabis conference, there would be speakers. And whether it was the research track or the therapeutic track or the indigenous tracks, in the evenings, you could go and experience different kinds of ceremonies. And so I went to Alex Bellari's ceremony. It was a daime experience with around 50 people in this old fort building, old Spanish style fort building. And Alex Bellari, like incredible gentleman, an elder, but so strong in the force of the medicine. And he was singing, and the main the central anchors were singing. And during that ceremony, when the medicine started showing me a potential timeline where there were millions of deaths on the planet, because of tsunamis and fires and earthquakes. And I was just really impacted as an empath, like really, really impacted. And I would start crying, and I couldn't stop. And I just didn't understand why the medicine had to show this to me in such a strong force. And I kept telling it that it was enough. And I didn't understand why I was being shown this. And so eventually I started to kind of come back into more grounding, and the messages that I received, and again, take what resonates, were that there will come a time on our planet, potentially, again, it's a timeline. There will come a time where it doesn't matter what car you drive, what family you're from, what your job is, what you're doing, doesn't matter. And none of that matters, because there won't be anything to hook onto except God, and except your connection to that sense of yourself and knowing. So that was one of the messages. The second message was that there will probably be a time where there will only be song and prayer. Like there won't be much other activity on the planet, just people sitting together in song and prayer, which we are seeing more and more of that happen in the different lineages and communities. The third thing that I received in that ceremony was this phrase of enlightenment is survival, and survival is enlightenment. And I reflected on that, and I could see it more and more in my life. It's like, okay, if you want to live without disease, without trauma, without continuous tension in the body, without chronic, immune issues, that is highly correlated with how non-attached you are, how fully present you are, how attuned you are to the full acceptance that everything is perfect. And so, the Buddhist traditions of equanimity, which are enlightenment, what is an enlightened being? A person who moves through life as love. And so that correlated very strongly to survival in this lifetime, at least in the way that it was showing me. So I thought, oh, that's going to be interesting. Maybe as humans, we're going to go through massive crises. We are in some ways in the sixth extinction, as David Suzuki says, he's an incredible environmentalist and activist based out of Vancouver. And he says we as a species are in a car going towards a brick wall, and we all can kind of see that this brick wall is there, and nobody's pulling the brakes. And so, here we are, again, a runaway culture, anxious humans. And what does it mean to be able to survive on the planet if we do face these crises? And that's one of the reasons why I got called to Costa Rica. For me, it was a really big reason of food and water security, baseline, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, baseline of food and, safety and shelter and water. And again, wherever we are on the planet is perfect. Our soul has agreed to be there. And I have a feeling that there probably will be some communities of the future, like more tribal living, that's going to start taking place. And people are already migrating out of cities in a lot of ways. People are already thinking about, how do we set up systems where even in the coldest climates, or if the grid systems go down in the United States, which are very old and very sensitive, if there are solar flares, which we just saw last month, that created the Aurora Borealis as low as Vancouver, like this, we are very vulnerable beings when it comes to these things. Let's say money gets, you can't take cash out of the bank account. We can't buy your food. And the electric system goes down because of a grid, and your plumbing isn't working. Your fridge is not working. And I think about these things a lot, and I talk about it openly because I just feel that a lot of people are just on there scrolling and in that zone, and they're like, okay, I don't have the capacity to even feel this or look at this. But as we start to open up and expand and feel and really take in everything from our world, what does that mean? And, how can we create these sanctuaries of light or sanctuaries of survival that other people can be brought into them as well? If there is a time period where, this transition does happen. Again, it sounds like a movie. It sounds like sci-fi. I don't feel like it's that strange to think about. And many, many people have gone, downloads around this. And I would love, and I'll end on this, I would love, I think it is happening, to your point of why lawyers or people in tech or engineers such as yourself who were, very smart, if we can have a solution summit, bring in the Silicon Valley that's being activated by LSD and psilocybin microdosing right now, bring in the top individuals who have been activated by medicine and get them into a summit, and we'll start talking about, ways that we can shift the wealth transfer, start to balance things out on our planet, regenerative agriculture, bringing back the soil health, starting to get, back into the coral reefs and reactivating. It's possible. I really feel as humans, we have creative energy that is an essence of God. And if we do channel it in the right way, I'm so excited to see what can happen. I have a feeling we can reverse this. Is everyone going to physically maybe make it on the planet? Maybe not. But even that is we have to just trust the process. And I think that's where people are kind of losing their way is like they're overreactive to things. Oh my God, that has happened. Oh my God, the fear aspect. And that was another piece with Aya that I forgot to mention in that ceremony. She said, you're either in love or you're in fear. Or even further than love, the equanimity that I spoke about. Right? It's actually, you just actually are. Nothing is affecting you except being in the essence of your breath. So it's an incredible training time. I literally feel like the Egyptians and the Buddhists that in the Tibetan Book of the Dead that I spoke about that were training for death. We are training. Each day of our life is training for death. And how do we stay completely anchored and connected no matter what is happening around us? That was a very long sharing. Sorry, but I hope that it answered or at least brought some reflections that you can tune in with too as well.
So yeah, guys, just in case, meanwhile, buy a cow, plant some fruit trees, move near to the water source. And, but yeah, hopefully we can prevent something bad from happening. I think the good way to do it would be if I could only get all those presidents here to drink ayahuasca, maybe we could avoid the nuclear war or something like that. But yeah, there's definitely some frictions and tensions all over the place. But in the end of the day, as I did a podcast with Isla Schaefer a few days ago, and she said, heal yourself first. And if everyone heals themselves, then all of a sudden everyone is healed. So to end it on a positive note, if you're afraid, come live with Loira. We have plenty of water, plenty of light and Starlink internet, so we'll be okay. Planting fruit trees now, and probably need to get fewer cows. Salimeh, what?
I appreciate your humor and your positivity around it because, and I love that the podcast speaker that you had previously who spoke to that. And that's one of my favorite Lao Tzu quotes that, to bring light into the world is just through our own self-transformation. So it's not like even what I said about the intention of the Solution Summit or, all the different hearts and minds of the planet, or, a lot of people I've spoken to where you said of going to the UN and having like a ceremony, an ayahuasca ceremony at the United Nations level. Like if we can hold intentions of that, right? The manifesting can happen if more and more of us are feeling into that. However, it's not from a place of that needs to happen or, okay, that's the only solution. Absolutely not. I just think about some things or say it, and then I come back to myself and I'm like, what am I doing today? Exactly as she said and you said. I'm like, what am I doing to create transformation and within myself? And from that place, divine inspiration happens just naturally.
Thank you, Salimeh. Thank you for this episode. I think it was very interesting and people will enjoy it. Where can people find more about your work?
Yeah, I really enjoyed our conversation too, and enjoy your energy and how grounded you are. And for individuals who want to, connect with me, my website is probably the best. So vibrantlifecounseling.com. And otherwise, just through my name, they'll be able to come across some other podcasts and places where they can learn more about plant medicine.
Thank you, Salimeh. Guys, check out Salimeh and her work. And you've been listening to Ayahuasca Podcast, and I will see you in the next episode. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you'd like to support us and psychedelic renaissance at large, please follow us and leave us a like wherever it is you're listening. Share this episode with someone who will benefit from this information. Nothing in this podcast is intended as medical advice, and it is for educational and entertainment purposes only. This episode is sponsored by Loira Ayahuasca Retreat. At Loira, we combine affordability, accessibility, and authenticity. Loira, connect, heal, grow. Guys, I'm looking forward to hosting you.
baila de la baila, cura con la guaira, limpia, limpia, taita, vibrando con la guaira.